Good afternoon and welcome to St Peter Mancroft Church, whether you're here in the church or watching online. If you're in church, please feel free to continue your visit. My name is Catherine Waddams. I'm one of the lay ministers here, and this is one of our daily events at 1 o'clock in the church, our Wednesday reflection. And today I would like to talk about kindness. I'm reading a book about two people who are investigating a series of murders and trying to prevent another one. A pretty typical crime novel, or mystery, as the Americans would call it. The book contains many pastiches of the genre, including a recognizably Miss Marple type and a slightly less well-crafted Los Angeles policeman who is not afraid to act tough and break the rules to get justice, but his heart's in the right place. This very unlikely pair are the heroes of the action, meeting over one murder at a stately home in Scotland and continuing the action, so far at least, back in privileged movie and business circles in California. Of course, the two characters have very different ways of dealing with other people, and the hard LA cop is amazed at the persuasive power of the elderly Scottish lady. At one stage, he reflects that her secret superpower is kindness. She uses it to persuade people to give information which they may not really have intended to share, and which his bullying certainly doesn't bring forth. He, of course, has other gifts, including getting physical access to unlikely places which she could not do. They make a good pair. So how does she use her kindness? It's partly in acknowledging people's hurt. As this is a piece of fiction, some of the characters have suffered frequent and multiple tragedies, luckily more than most of us have to endure. But we have all experienced some sadness, some loss. Our Miss Marple character is able to refer to these difficult parts of other people's lives with empathy, recognizing the pain that has been caused and encouraging people to open up. Of course, this isn't always the best supportive approach, but the author has a plot to get through and a conclusion to reach. Sometimes it's better to wait for others to identify the areas they might want to talk about, and perhaps this isn't a model of the best pastoral and supportive practice. But in the book, as people talk about these painful times, they reveal more about the dastardly plot which lies behind the action. The Cambridge Dictionary defines kindness as, quote, the quality of being generous, helpful, caring about other people, or an act showing this quality. And another definition relates it to such behavior without expecting praise or reward in return. I find it interesting that it separates being kind from acting kindly. It reminds me a bit of the different kinds of listening which we can use. If we are listening with kindness, then it's to understand, rather than listening to prepare a response or a defense, as we so often do. So I wonder how kind we are, and in what circumstances. On Sunday, we were caught up in a major rail failure in Denmark. A power cable was down, with no trains through a major bottleneck between Jutland and Fyn, and as it was Whitsun, it was a major holiday, with many people travelling to see their families. Denmark still celebrates a Whitsun holiday rather than a fixed late spring break as we do. Train after train arrived on our side of the blockage with another load of confused passengers, some desperate to get to Copenhagen airport. There were no replacement buses because all vehicles in the vicinity had been booked for a local employee's Whitsun outing, and taxis were in great demand. But people were amazingly good-natured, and I would say kind to each other. While the whole incident, which caused disruption over several days, makes trains in this country and dealing with breakdown seem veritably efficient, the stranded passengers were patient with each other, and the staff made themselves available, even though they had little information to give us. We hung around for a couple of hours to see whether trains might arrive, and spent some of this time queuing for the toilet, in case we might need it by the time we got to the front of the queue half an hour later. Deciding nothing much was likely to happen, we made a group with 3 other people and managed to find a taxi to take us around the blockage. Even the exchange with someone else who tried to take it, who ran up to the taxi and claimed that it was the survival of the fastest, was reasonably good-natured. Which got me thinking that part of the good-natured element was a focus on the common frustration of the situation rather than a competition to get out of it, whether competing for taxis or a seat on a train if and when it did appear, or even jumping the loo queue. And people looked out for the most vulnerable. Railway staff organised taxis for a very confused blind person, for 2 people in wheelchairs, and for those who were desperate to catch planes. And even in the loo queue, we kept an eye out for small children who might not have been able to wait half an hour to get to the front. It also meant tolerating some unfairness. While we were negotiating one taxi, some other people walked up with no awareness of others waiting, so we missed that one. I guess that was the survival of the fastest. But the general atmosphere helped us to stay calm. Even the poor Swedish man with a huge suitcase, part of our little group, who had a 3-hour journey ahead of him after we got to Copenhagen. We were glad to have some leftover Scottish shortbread to share. But sometimes the graffiti, which you may have seen on Pottergate, not far from here, cooperation, not competition, seems very appropriate. This kindness, this generosity of spirit, made the ordeal much easier for everyone, though we were very tired when we arrived at our hotel 4 hours late, after standing for many hours in the station and on the overcrowded train from beyond the blockage. When a woman kindly offered me her seat, I felt as able to stand or sit on the floor as she was, so declined, and she was able to keep her seat and dozed for most of the journey. And because people were generally kind to each other, there was less aggression in response to what was a very frustrating experience for us all. But I was glad to have my Scottish California novel to pass some of the time. I suppose that Penny, our Scottish detective, is using her magic power of kindness with an ulterior motive, i.e. she is expecting a reward. In her case, of eliciting some useful information, usually successfully. But of course the author wants us to like his heroes, so we believe that this is based on her underlying kind nature. I'm afraid I still don't have the slightest idea who done it, or if the unlikely pair of detectives will succeed in preventing further bloodshed. I am on page 368 of 497. But as I admire our heroes' different superpowers, kindness seems a good one to practice, and I hope that by doing it, it may lead me to be a kinder person inside. Thank you for listening. I wish you many blessings of kindness for the rest of today, both opportunity to give kindness and experience of receiving it.